Well, Nolan, thank you so much for joining the Okotoks podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Now, before we get into everything, Nolan, how old are you?
I'm 16 years old.
16. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's truly unbelievable with what the little that I know about you. And I guess maybe I'm just comparing you to where I was when I was 16. Like I thought it was a pretty good accomplishment when I figured out on Nintendo that if you just blow into the cartridge, that you could, because Nintendo would always freeze. And I thought I actually accomplished something. Nolan, in everything that I have even written in front of me already, you just completely blow me away that you're only 16 and you have no doubt wisdom beyond your years.
Thank you so greatly for that wonderful
Yeah,
statement.
for sure. So 16 years old, not you are the owner of Funky Fresh Reptiles.
That's correct.
You also play the French horn in the Calgary Youth Orchestra.
That's correct. Yes.
And you are working on a possible presentation to world leaders. You're starting to gather local leaders in the area in regards to making a speech to world leaders. And what is your heart behind that world speech? Like what direction would you head? Because I know if I had the opportunity to speak to a few world leaders, I'm sure it wouldn't be the same thing that you're about to tell me.
Very well. Well, my overall goal with that is to not only give youth a voice, but kind of help because youth have a strong voice. People tend to, sometimes more or less take into consideration what youth have to say. And so, not just from myself, I've reached out to the town of Okotoks and internationally as well, asking what youth would like to see from their leaders, what they want from their leaders, and what we need from our leaders now to ensure our success for future generations.
And what kind of things are you hearing?
So more or less the biggest thing is polarization. There's so much polarization between politics in politics right now. And it's really unfortunate. There's so much hate, there's so much name calling and labeling and everything of the sort. So much so that a political party is a buzzword. I don't think that's fair at all by any means. Really, in the end, we're people with common interests all trying to achieve a common goal. And I don't see why we have to work opposing to each other. Why can't we all work together to achieve said goal?
Right. You're exactly right. You look at the US election that just took place, you look at the Canadian election that just took place, and it's basically you got to choose a side. And if you are opposite sides than me, well, we don't get along. I heard a thing down in the States a few years ago that if you're a Democrat, you are not friends with any Republicans and vice versa. If you're a Republican, you don't have nobody in your friend group is a Democrat.
Exactly, yeah. And that should never have been the case. That shouldn't be the case now by any means. And it's really unfortunate to see. I have many friends that are of different political affiliations than myself, and I'm totally honest. I try to be as center as I possibly can because there are benefits to both sides, both the left and the right. And you also look like the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party of Canada don't sit that far away from each other on the political spectrum. And so, really, there's definitely common ground that we can all agree on. And there certainly is, but I feel like, especially within this past election, that's really not been a focus as much as it should be a focus.
Do you think politics are using people's like it's divide and conquer? You gotta divide and conquer. You gotta divide the people you're not expecting and I'm speaking from the political party point of view. They're not expecting to get all the votes, but if we can focus in on this one group and divide them from the other group, that we might end up with the majority. Do you think that's part of their game plan?
Most certainly, and you can see it like with what Pierre Poilievre's doing right now. He's running in a predominantly blue riding and a predominantly conservative riding, so that he's actually coming up in the by-elections, that he's actually guaranteed um, that seat essentially, right? There's obviously going to be, liberal and NDP, but conservative will be the majority of that vote. And so, yeah, there is some divide and conquering between that. And that's with every single political party. They're going to run in the ridings where their political party is likely to win.
Right. So if you ever do get into that world stage, where you're in front of like right now, it sounds like you're working with some local politicians. Like you mentioned, you've reached out to Tanya Thorne, you've reached out to John Barlow. Who's the third one? Janice Irwin?
Yeah, Janice Irwin and RJ Sigurdsson, they've all responded back to me, and we're in the midst of arranging some and scheduling meetings with them at the moment.
Right. And what's your intent? Like when you get to meet with those politicians, what are you hoping for?
Really, I'm hoping for their advice, their guidance, what they also want to see as well, and their support. Like stated, I'm not on any side. I try to be as central as possible politically. And so, really, there is having that common ground that we all agree on in order to achieve that goal of ultimate success between within economies, social aspects as well, minimal discrimination, equality between everyone, but also a flourishing financial economy as well.
Right. No, and I certainly do like that. Like I guess the way that we can look at us as a society as we are a body essentially. Every part of the body has its role. And inside of that, if we were all an eye, so to speak, the body wouldn't really function well. And I think you are certainly onto something as we do get into these political parties. They come in there, they implement their agenda once they have a majority. And the cycle that we do have is, even look at Eastern Canada, the liberals get in, and then every once in a while the conservatives get in. The conservatives come in, they kind of try to do everything in 4 years, and then they get booted out again. And it's just this cycle. And yes, there certainly is. Like you even listen to the parliament, when they meet for parliament, there is a lot of bickering, a lot of back talking, a lot of fighting. I don't know if you had the chance to listen to my podcast with Tanya Thorne. I was able to visit with her, and we started to discuss how politics has become, yes, divide and conquer. But you look at the way the municipal government is run, where you vote in the mayor, you vote in the council members, and right now we don't know what political party they're associated with, but all these people that are voted in have to come together and figure out how to work together, as opposed to going up to Edmonton or going to Ottawa. And once you're in, it doesn't really matter what your people think anymore, the people that voted you in, because we got the democracy, we're going to ram this through. There's really no point having a vote in parliament or legislature once you have the majority, because you know the majority is going to win, as opposed to taking that 4 years inside of politics, working through the issues that they do have together, where they do have to sit down and talk with each other.
Exactly, and I love the way, in the sense that the municipal council is doing it, is because that you don't know what party they're a part of, right? So you're actually voting for the person themselves. You look with, like, you know, right now, a lot of conservatives aren't happy with Mark Carney being elected, and it was great to see his election and his campaign, and it was just incredible. But you also have to look and think, like, okay, in regards to his policies and everything, it's almost like he's an old school conservative. Between his policies, economically, they are a little bit more to the right. Right, it's a little bit more of a capitalist market, which has been proven to work, right? And so, but he does have, like, that socially left aspect as well. And so when you're looking at it, you could consider him like a 19 old school conservative before all the hate came in, before all the polarization came in. And so that's now a buzzword because he's liberal, right? And so what I love with the municipal council is they're not affiliated with any specific political party, right? You're voting for the person themselves, their values, and their policies. And I think that has had, obviously, success within Okotoks, and I'm sure other municipalities throughout Alberta and throughout Canada as a whole as well.
Right, for sure. No, that's awesome, Nolan. I certainly wish you well. I hope that you keep pushing. I hope that you're able to get together with the local, we'll call them the local politicians, and be able to speak to them, and hopefully they hear what you're saying, and then you can even get a bigger platform down the road, which is fantastic. So,
Thank you.
and Nolan, you are also the owner of Funky Fresh Reptiles.
That's correct, yes.
Now, I see in the background there, is that
It is, yes. My bedroom and my reptile room as well, if you want to call it that. And then also my main breeding facility that has begun to branch to other places of the house. Mom and dad are starting to become more okay with it. So I think we're reaching good ground there.
they weren't okay with it at the start?
No, they were actually always okay with it. My parents they've been incredibly supportive and they're fans of animals themselves. They've always grown up with animals. I just kind of took the initiative to keep it enclosed within my room now. And then like they're like, oh, if you want to bring a couple plants downstairs, or if you want to I've got a couple display enclosures in the works downstairs as well. And so like, please, by all means, do.
Yeah, I there was a part of me that thought it would be kind of cool to do a podcast in person, but right now, just where I'm at, I'm not, because you got tarantulas, or I gotta say that right, tarantulas in there.
Correct. Yes.
You also have scorpions. What other kind of like poisonous reptiles do you have in your room?
So one thing I just wanted to correct on is tarantulas and scorpions actually aren't poisonous; they're venomous. And so through their stingers and their fangs, the venom will be injected into your bloodstream, which will then cause the effects. But with poison, that's more ingested, where you'll actually end up with those side effects. Theoretically speaking, you could drink venom, providing you don't have any cuts in your throats with minimal side effects or anything. I don't recommend it by any means, but there is a difference between poison and venom. So they are venomous. Among the species that I have are some of the most venomous species of tarantula in the world, which is incredibly fun to work with. They do have medically significant venom. On the ladder to that, I do keep several species of poison dart frogs, but the coolest thing about them is that they aren't actually poisonous in captivity. So in the wild, they'll get their poison from what they eat, such as ants and other types of insects and invertebrates, which contain what's called alkaloids. So then when the poison dart frogs eat that, when they eat that prey, they'll use those alkaloids to actually synthesize their own poison, thus them being poisonous. In captivity, I feed them flightless fruit flies, and so the fruit flies themselves have been selectively bred to have vestigial wings, so they can't actually fly at all. They do have the wings, they just don't work. And they don't actually contain those alkaloids. So as a result, the poison dart frogs are not actually poisonous in captivity. And in fact, we do more harm to them through the oils and other nasties on our skin. They can actually go through their permeable skin, so the oils can actually go into their body and cause more harm than they do to us.
Okay, so if they escape in your house and they start feasting off of like spiders and stuff, they find, let's say you had a bunch of spiders in your house, would they become poisonous, or because they were born in captivity, they would not?
Well, that does really all depend on the species of whatever they're eating, whatever the prey is. And so the first thing I would look at is, and there's not, like, there has to be lots of scientific research going into that to actually see if there's alkaloids within the species here. The other part to that is that the spiders would likely be too large for the jar frogs, especially the largest, even the largest species. They'd probably be a little bit too large for them, and so they wouldn't be able to properly eat them. And the other part to that is keeping dart frogs. They require high humidity. I keep my enclosures between 90 and 100% humidity, and so it's wet all the time. So even if they're out for a couple hours, they'll pass away, unfortunately, just because they require such high humidity, as that's what they have in the wild.
So is your room quite humid right now? Do you keep your room, I would imagine the humidity in your room is quite high.
Absolutely, yeah. So within like the enclosures themselves, I do seal them off in a sense, and so I do have ventilation in there. But then there's also techniques that I use and methods that I use to enclose the humidity as best I can to reach that 90 to 100% humidity. My room as a whole right now is currently sitting at 45%. I've got a little
Okay.
hygrometer up there, but usually it's around 45, 55%, and then going no more than 60 to 65% humidity.
Right. And how many scorpions do you have?
I have two specimens right now of the same species. A Heterometrus spinifer is the species, or I'm not the best with common names, but that would be the Asian forest scorpion.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? Like a lot of I listened to a podcast of that you were on. I don't remember the name of the podcast. You were interviewed by a guy. And to be honest, 99% of what you're saying was just going right over my head. Like you're so well educated in this, and this is all quite foreign. But and the do all scorpions, like if you take a black light to a scorpion, do all of them glow, or is it just certain scorpions that?
So
Have you heard of that?
yeah, yeah. So for the species that I have, they will actually glow under black light, like black UV light. I'm
Yeah.
not sure, like, when you get into the more, like, arid species, like the Hottentotta species, I can't say exactly if they do glow under that black light, but, you know, 8 out of 10 scorpions will actually glow under that black light, and so you can go down to,
Right.
like, Arizona and other arid parts of, like, the Sonoran Desert as well, and there'll be scorpions everywhere, and all you have to do to find them is just hold the flashlight and, with, like, the black light flashlight, and you'll see them glow up, and that's the easiest way to find them.
Right. This is a business for you. Like you've turned it around. Like when did you decide that you were like not just having these as pets or something to look at, but you decided that you wanted to turn this into a business?
Yeah, so I've been keeping animals my entire life. Even before I was born, my parents have had animals that we still have today, an Amazon parrot and more as well. And so they've always been incorporated in my life in one way or another. There's never not been an animal in our house, which has
Right.
been awesome. And so back in, 2021-ish, so a couple years ago, I was always in the back of my head, wanting to breed leopard geckos initially. And we started actually, like, my parents were like, yeah, let's do it. It was great fun. It's good. It's a good educational aspect as well. And just see where that takes us. And so in the beginning of 2022, I paired my first leopard geckos. Um, and eventually got eggs from them on, I think it was like February 11th, 2022, and then the first egg hatched on April 1st, 2022. And since then it's just, exploded. I was like, wow, it's such a rewarding feeling, going through the entire process, incubating the eggs, watching them hatch, and then caring for the young, watching them hatch, and then ultimately sending them to their forever homes. It was an incredibly rewarding experience, and there was so much potential with it as well, between my passion for animals and then also like the willingness and the knowledge and the dedication to care for them and to do all the processes and everything. My parents were incredibly supportive of that, and they're like, yeah, if that's what you want to do, by all means, go ahead and do it. And as that started expanding, I got into dart frogs and mourning geckos, which are parthenogenic species of gecko. And we can touch on that later if you are interested. And then now to hopefully breeding tarantulas in the future, but then tons of other gecko species as well, lots of day gecko species and other New Caledonian gecko species, and then lots more on the way as well. So yeah, really since 2022, now it's really exploded. In 2024, so last year, I actually ended up vending my first Reptile Expo, which was the Western Canadian Reptile Expo. That was at the Seven Chiefs Sportsplex on the Tsutsina Nation.
Okay.
And it was an incredible success. It was uh, great exposure as the first time and as an expanding and growing business. And my primary platform is social media accounts, and so that's really upped from there. So much so that just this past April, Spruce Meadows actually reached out to me and invited me as a guest and a vendor at their Pet Fest. And that was an incredible experience. And then the weekend after that was more reptile expos, and I've got lots more booked in the future as well. And then between podcasts and, all the social media stuff as well, it's really, really snowballed from there, which has really helped, not only the business, but also my passion for the business as well and the community that's formulated around it.
Right. No, it's again, I'm just sitting here thinking this you're 16. Like unbelievable. Like good for you. In your the last podcast that I listened to, you said there was some kind of species that depending on the temperature that they're incubated at will determine the sex of the species.
That's right. So that's actually leopard geckos, which are those are the first gecko species that I originally started to breed. I'm breeding them again this year. Actually, I just got another incubator that came in today, and I'll be setting them up as I've got several different species now
You're
that
so
require.
excited about that. That's awesome.
Absolutely. They require different temperatures for incubation. And so you can really dial down on each species and have one incubator dedicated to a species. And so for leopard geckos, how it works more or less is the lower the temperature, you'll get female. It's called a temperature sex determinant, they are. And so the temperature that you'll incubate the eggs at will determine their sex ultimately. And so I do mine at a mixed sex just because it's easiest, right? It's at that kind of 88 degrees Fahrenheit range where you could get either male or female. And I've gotten both male and female from it. And so the lower the temperature, generally you'll get females. And then the slightly higher the temperature is where you'll get males as well, which is really good for, selective breeding as well. If you're looking for, or if you're wanting a specific sex of a species and their temperature sex determinate, great. You can just incubate it at that temperature and that can help go towards, future breeding projects and everything of the sorts like that.
Right. Nolan, when do you have time to play the French horn? Because you're also in the Calgary Youth Orchestra.
That's right. I go by such a tight and strict schedule right now, and I have been for years, and so it's kind of routine at this moment. Usually it's like I wake up at 5 in the morning and then I'll do schoolwork and whatever else needs to be done, and then I go to school, and as soon as I come home, I usually take maybe a half hour break or so just to regenerate after school and whatever the day has. And then I'll book in like 30-minute to an hour practice sessions a day for French horn, and then go on to animal chores and everything else, all the other schoolwork as well. And then between like lessons as well that I do with professional musicians, it's always just managing the time and planning ahead of like, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow? Okay, how much time do I actually have to practice? Sometimes it might only take, sometimes I might only even be able to practice for 10, 20 minutes, but it's still better than not practicing at all. You're keeping the muscles strong within your lips, which helps with the embouchure. And you're also continuing a disciplined style and schedule with that.
Do the reptiles like the French horn?
That's a lot of them actually, like the leopard geckos do have ear holes, is what they're called. So they don't actually have like the extended ear. They just have ear holes. And, I usually practice in my room or I'll practice, in other places throughout the house. I've never actually noticed, a actual response from them. And I always watch as well when I'm playing. So they don't seem to mind at all, which is fairly convenient.
Right, for sure. No. Um, Nolan, you are truly unbelievable. I'm sitting here thinking where I was at when I was 16, and yeah, I was more concerned. In fact, when I was 16, my mom had to take away my Nintendo during final exams, because NBA Jam just came out, and that's where I was at, right? I was, but I think maybe we should get your parents on here at some point, and they should really maybe consider writing a parenting book. And I'd love to read it. It'd be probably a fantastic read. But Nolan, you are unbelievable person, a wealth of information, and so great that you are what represents Okotoks. And I really hope you keep that drive alive, that you don't let that passion die. When we talk politics, where you just keep going, and I hope that takes you where you want to take it to. And I really hope that you keep pushing the envelope on that. And Nolan, if somebody wants to purchase a gecko, how would they get in contact with you? Or if they want to purchase some other kind of reptile that you're like, are you selling them on a regular basis?
Absolutely, yes. I'm in the process of making a website right now, actually, but I can be reached on all social medias as well. My email, which is on my business cards, it's nolan.asplund08 at gmail.com. And yeah, I sell, I do have like regular clientele. I have a couple people coming in tonight actually to buy some fruit flies. I've got some more deliveries tomorrow as well and whatnot. And so usually there's sales every week, a couple times a week, which is really nice, and it's really starting to grow with the expansion of the business. And yeah, it's between you know leopard geckos and morning geckos and dart frogs, and then I've also got a couple more day gecko species projects in the works right now, and I'm currently working with over, actually probably closer to 60 species of plants right now. And so I propagate and sell them as well, and they're really beneficial for bioactive enclosures. A lot of them are suitable as houseplants as well, propagated and sterilized and everything of the sort. So they're ready to go right into whatever you wish to do with them. And so between everything of the sorts, including like other bioactive supplies as well, so the microfauna, which would be like springtails and isopods, they'll actually go in and, eat the mold and the poop and other nasties within the enclosure, which help ultimately provide nutrients for the plants, which provide foliage for the animals, and the cycle just continues. So almost all of the enclosures that I have right now are bioactive enclosures, is what they're called. So they're self-sustaining ecosystems. I also do, custom enclosures as well. So if you are in the looks for something in particular, you can just, provide me like the size you're wanting, the kind of theme you're wanting, and I can quote back to you and work on a project, big or small. That would be incredible. And then lots of feeders as well to help feed your animals. So it's really like I'm really trying to get it towards that one-stop shop, if you will, one-stop business, to where everything that you need is here all at once for ultimate convenience for the customers.
Nolan, thank you for your time. This has been very enlightening. You're a wealth of information, wise beyond your years, that's for sure. And I appreciate you. I appreciate your heart. I appreciate what you're even trying to do politically. And I wish you all the best with that. And I look forward to having another visit. Now, I don't know if I'm going to come for a visit in person, because I think if I was to see a spider, if a spider was to get out, I'd probably scream like Marv from Home Alone when the spider ended up on his face. I'd let a pretty good rip out there.
Very well. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on and for just the incredibly kind words and support from your end and for this incredible opportunity. I'm truly, truly honored. And so thank you for that. And, one thing that I mentioned on I'm not sure if you saw the article on the Western Wheel that I did with Amir said, but
I
one
did.
of the things I mentioned on there is, education is the foundation of everything. Often people are taught from a young age that tarantulas and other bugs and whatnot are these like big monsters that are trying to get you. It's actually like quite the opposite. I'll walk into my room and almost all of my tarantulas will just like hide, right? They're never actually going to you, and really when you come to realize that, even when you're working with them, 9 out of 10 times, they're incredibly calm. And so they're not actually what they've been made out to be, They're incredibly majestic and calm and just overall fascinating creatures. And so I feel like the more that message gets spread throughout, the less people will actually be afraid of them, and the more people will be willing to help with their conservation and help with their overall success as a species.
That's awesome. Nolan, thank you, my friend. It's been a privilege, and all the best in the future. And I look forward to having you on the show again.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, Nolan.